Picture walking through the halls of the most magnificent library the ancient world had ever known, a place where the air hummed with the energy of scholars debating, where scrolls from every corner of the known world lined the shelves, and where the collective wisdom of centuries was preserved under one roof. This was the Library of Alexandria, a monument to human curiosity and ambition that stood as the intellectual heart of the ancient world. It wasn't just a building, it was a dream made real, a testament to what happens when a society values knowledge above all else. And yet, its fate is one of history's most haunting mysteries. How could something so monumental, so cherished, simply vanish? The answer is a story of fire, conflict, and the fragile nature of human achievement. Think about the sheer scale of what was lost. The Library of Alexandria wasn't just a collection of books, it was a living, breathing hub of innovation. Here, Euclid laid the foundations of geometry, Archimedes pondered the principles of physics, and astronomers mapped the stars with astonishing precision. This was where the boundaries of human understanding were pushed further than ever before. But today, we're left with only fragments of its legacy, like trying to reconstruct a masterpiece from a handful of scattered brushstrokes. The loss isn't just about the scrolls that burned. It's about the countless ideas, discoveries, and stories that might have changed the course of history if they'd survived. So what really happened to this great beacon of knowledge? Was it a single catastrophic event or a slower, more insidious decline? The truth is shrouded in layers of myth and conflicting accounts, each more dramatic than the last. Some blame Julius Caesar's siege, others point to religious conflict centuries later, and still others argue it was a gradual decay, a victim of neglect as much as flame. But one thing is certain, the fall of the Library of Alexandria wasn't just the end of a building, it was a turning point in human history, a moment when the light of learning flickered and nearly went out. And that's why its story still matters today. In a world where information is everywhere but wisdom feels scarce, the rise and fall of this ancient library reminds us of the preciousness of knowledge and how easily it can slip through our fingers. So let's step back in time to uncover the secrets of this legendary institution, piece by piece, and discover what its legacy means for us now. To understand the Library of Alexandria's true significance, we have to go back to its origins, not just as a building, but as a revolutionary idea. At the dawn of the 3rd century before the Common Era, Ptolemy I, a general under Alexander the Great, had a vision that went beyond conquest. He dreamed of a city that would outshine all others, not through military might, but through the power of knowledge. Alexandria, with its towering lighthouse and bustling port, was already a marvel of the ancient world. But Ptolemy wanted something even more enduring, a sanctuary for learning so vast it would hold the sum of human understanding. This wasn't just about collecting scrolls, it was about creating a living, breathing center of innovation. The Ptolemies didn't wait for knowledge to come to them, they actively sought it out. Imagine ships arriving in Alexandria's harbor, their cargo inspected not just for spices or silk, but for something far more precious, books. Authorities would seize scrolls, hand them to scribes for copying, and often keep the originals, sending back only the duplicates. It was a bold, even ruthless strategy, but it worked. Within decades, the library amassed hundreds of thousands of texts, from Greek tragedies to Egyptian medical treatises, Babylonian astronomy to Indian mathematics. What made this place extraordinary wasn't just the volume of knowledge, but how it was used. The Ptolemies didn't hoard these texts like treasures locked away in a vault. Instead, they invited the greatest minds of the age to study, debate, and build upon them. Scholars received stipends, free lodging, and access to materials, an ancient version of today's research grants. This wasn't just a library, it was the world's first think tank. Here, Eratosthenes calculated the Earth's circumference with stunning accuracy, and Hypatia mapped the stars with tools that wouldn't be rivaled for centuries. The library didn't just preserve knowledge, it propelled it forward. Yet this golden age didn't happen by accident. The Ptolemies understood that knowledge was power, and they wielded it with precision. By making Alexandria the undisputed hub of scholarship, they ensured their city's influence would outlast any military victory. But this ambition came at a cost. The aggressive collection of texts bred resentment, and the library's dominance meant rival centers of learning withered in its shadow. Even so, for a few glorious centuries, the Library of Alexandria stood as proof of what humanity could achieve when curiosity was given the resources to thrive. It wasn't perfect, but it was unparalleled, a testament to the idea that the pursuit of knowledge is the highest calling of civilization. The grandeur of the Library of Alexandria wasn't just in its collection of scrolls, it was in its design, a physical embodiment of humanity's thirst for understanding. Unlike today's libraries, which often serve as quiet spaces for individual study, this ancient marvel was built for collaboration, a buzzing hive of intellectual exchange. At its core stood the Museum, the temple of the muses, where scholars didn't just read, they debated, experimented, and pushed the boundaries of what was known. Picture a place where Euclid might sketch geometric proofs in the sand of a sunlit courtyard, while Archimedes paced nearby, lost in thought about the principles of leverage. This wasn't just storage, it was a workshop for the mind. What made the library truly revolutionary was its structure. Scrolls weren't haphazardly stacked but meticulously organized by subject: astronomy, medicine, philosophy, each with its own dedicated section. Imagine walking those halls where librarians maintained detailed catalogs, the ancient equivalent of a search engine, guiding scholars to the texts they needed. But the innovation didn't stop there. Beyond the scroll rooms, the complex sprawled into lush gardens where thinkers gathered under shaded walkways to argue theories, while nearby, exotic animals from distant lands were kept for observation, turning the library into an early laboratory for biology. This wasn't just about preserving knowledge, it was about actively creating it. The Ptolemies understood that true learning thrives in community, so they designed spaces to foster it. Lecture halls for public debates, communal dining areas where ideas could cross-pollinate over meals, and even living quarters for resident scholars. In many ways, the Library of Alexandria functioned like a modern research university, blending resources, mentorship, and interdisciplinary collaboration. Yet perhaps its most striking feature was its universality. The library didn't discriminate between cultures or disciplines. Egyptian medical texts sat alongside Greek poetry. Babylonian star charts were studied next to Indian mathematical treatises. In an era when knowledge was often guarded by borders or traditions, the library stood as a testament to the power of synthesis, proof that humanity's greatest breakthroughs happen when diverse minds and ideas collide. That's why its design still resonates today. In a world where information is fragmented across screens and algorithms, the Library of Alexandria reminds us of the magic that happens when we bring knowledge together, not just to store it, but to ignite it. Inside those hallowed halls, the Library of Alexandria didn't just house knowledge, it created it, thanks to the extraordinary minds who called it home. Take Euclid, for example. While geometry existed before him, it was his meticulous work here that transformed scattered ideas into a unified system, one so enduring that his Elements became the standard math textbook for over 2,000 years. Picture him in a sunlit corner of the library, carefully inscribing proofs that would teach generations how to measure the world, but he wasn't alone. Across the courtyard, Eratosthenes was making an even bolder leap. With little more than a stick, a shadow, and an insatiable curiosity, he calculated the Earth's circumference, missing the actual measurement by less than 2%. That's the kind of brilliance this place nurtured, thinkers who saw possibilities where others saw limits. Then there was Herophilus, a physician whose work might make modern students squirm. In a time when dissecting human bodies was taboo, he pushed boundaries, mapping the nervous system and distinguishing arteries from veins. His discoveries were so groundbreaking that they shaped medical understanding for centuries. And let's not forget Aristarchus, the astronomer who dared to suggest the unthinkable, that Earth revolved around the sun, not the other way around. Imagine the audacity of that idea in an age when the heavens were thought to literally revolve around humanity. Though his theory was dismissed for generations, it proved the library wasn't just preserving wisdom, it was challenging it, testing every assumption in the relentless pursuit of truth. What set these scholars apart wasn't just their intellect, but the environment that fueled it. The library wasn't a silent tomb of scrolls, it was a vibrant arena of debate. Philosophers clashed over theories in bustling lecture halls, engineers tested prototypes in shaded gardens, and poets recited verses alongside mathematicians scribbling equations. This cross-pollination of ideas was the secret to its genius. When Herophilus studied anatomy, he likely drew from Egyptian embalming techniques recorded in the library's scrolls. When Aristarchus gazed at the stars, he built on Babylonian astronomical records housed just shelves away. That's the real magic of Alexandria. It didn't just collect knowledge from across the world, it connected it, allowing ideas to collide and spark revolutions. Yet for all their achievements, these thinkers shared one fragile thread. Their work survived only because the library preserved it. Euclid's geometry might have been lost to time without scribes copying his texts. Eratosthenes' calculation of the Earth could have faded into myth without scholars passing it down. That's the haunting irony of Alexandria's story. The very place that enabled these breakthroughs was itself impermanent, a reminder that even the brightest flames of genius depend on the institutions that keep them burning. The true tragedy of the Library of Alexandria isn't just that it burned, it's what went up in flames. Picture shelves stretching as far as the eye could see, each one heavy with scrolls containing knowledge gathered from every corner of the ancient world. Historians estimate the collection held between 400,000 and 700,000 scrolls, a number so vast it would rival many modern university libraries. But these weren't just books, they were irreplaceable windows into lost civilizations. Homer's epic poems sat alongside Plato's philosophical dialogues and Aristotle's scientific treatises, forming the backbone of Western thought. Yet that was only the beginning. Egyptian medical scrolls detailed surgical procedures and herbal remedies that wouldn't be rediscovered for centuries. Babylonian astronomers had recorded celestial movements with precision that still astounds researchers today. And Indian mathematicians had explored concepts like zero and infinity, ideas so ahead of their time they'd reshape global scholarship when they finally resurfaced. What makes this loss so haunting is how much we know was destroyed and how much we'll never know. Take Sophocles, the legendary Greek playwright. Of his estimated 120 plays, only 7 survive in full. The rest likely reduced to ashes in Alexandria, taking with them stories, characters, and insights into ancient Greek culture that are gone forever. Or consider the histories of civilizations that left no other records, entire cultures whose voices were preserved only in those scrolls, now silenced. Even more heartbreaking are the scientific works that might have changed the course of human progress. Imagine a scroll containing theories about germs or gravity, written centuries before their official discovery, lost before they could inspire further breakthroughs. The library's collection was more than the sum of its parts. It represented the first serious attempt to gather the world's knowledge in one place, transcending borders and languages. A scholar in Alexandria could compare Greek philosophy with Egyptian medicine, or cross-reference Babylonian star charts with Indian arithmetic. This interdisciplinary approach was revolutionary, an ancient version of the Internet's promise to connect ideas across disciplines. But unlike digital data, these scrolls couldn't be backed up. When they burned, they took with them unique perspectives, alternative histories, and potentially paradigm-shifting ideas. Today, we're left with echoes. Some texts survive as second-hand quotes in later works, like shadows cast by lost originals. Others are known only by their titles, tantalizing hints of what once was. The library's destruction didn't just rob the ancient world, it impoverished every generation that came after. We're left to wonder how much further we might have progressed, how many intellectual dead ends might have been avoided if even a fraction of those scrolls had survived. The fire that consumed Alexandria didn't just burn paper and ink, it burned bridges to our collective past, leaving us to rebuild what we can from the fragments that remain. The story of the Library of Alexandria's destruction is wrapped in layers of myth and conflicting accounts, each version more dramatic than the last. Julius Caesar's siege in 48 before the Common Era is often cited as the turning point. As the tale goes, his forces set fire to ships in the harbor to prevent enemy reinforcements, and the flames leaped ashore, consuming part of the library. But here's where things get murky. Ancient sources like Seneca mention 400,000 scrolls lost in the blaze, while others, like the historian Plutarch, claim only warehouses near the docks burned. So was it a catastrophic wipeout or a contained incident? The truth might lie somewhere in between, a devastating blow but not the final death knell. What's often overlooked is the slow erosion that followed. Even if Caesar's fire damaged the library, it likely continued operating for centuries, suffering from neglect as much as flames. The Ptolemies' successors lacked their predecessors' zeal for scholarship, and funding dwindled. Scrolls decayed in humid storerooms or were sold off to pay debts. By the time of Cleopatra, the library was already a shadow of its former self. But then came another suspect in its demise: religious upheaval. In 391 of the Common Era, Christian riots targeted pagan institutions, and the library's daughter institution, the Serapeum, was reportedly destroyed. Some historians argue this was the final blow, while others insist the main library had already faded into obscurity by then. Then there's the most enduring myth of all: the claim that Muslim conquerors in 642 ordered the library's contents burned to fuel the city's bathhouses for 6 months. The problem: this story appears centuries later in a single dubious account, with no contemporary evidence. It's a cautionary tale about how history gets rewritten to fit narratives, turning complex truths into simplistic legends. The real tragedy isn't that the library burned in one dramatic inferno, it's that its decline was a series of missed chances to save it. Wars chipped away at its collections, indifference starved its scholars, and time gnawed at its scrolls. Perhaps that's the most unsettling parallel to our own era. Knowledge isn't just lost in flames, it slips away when we stop valuing it, when we assume someone else will preserve it. The Library of Alexandria didn't vanish in a day. It faded, piece by piece, until one day, the world woke up to realize it was gone. The Library of Alexandria didn't collapse in isolation. It was caught in the crosscurrents of political change, a casualty of shifting empires and ideologies. At its height, the Ptolemies treated knowledge as a pillar of power, pouring resources into the library as both a cultural jewel and a political statement. But as Rome's influence expanded, Alexandria's role as the Mediterranean's intellectual epicenter began to erode. Emperors saw the city not as a beacon of learning, but as a potential rival. When Augustus conquered Egypt in 30 before the Common Era, he prioritized control over cultivation, treating the library as an afterthought rather than a treasure. The message was clear: knowledge mattered only when it served the empire's agenda. This neglect turned deliberate under rulers like Theodosius I, whose edicts in the late 4th century condemned so-called pagan institutions. Suddenly, the library's vast collection of Greek philosophy, Egyptian astronomy, and Babylonian mathematics wasn't just outdated, it was politically dangerous. Scholars faced an impossible choice: abandon their life's work or risk persecution. Many fled to Constantinople, taking fragments of Alexandria's wisdom with them, while those who stayed watched as funding evaporated and scrolls gathered dust. The irony was crushing. The same texts that had once been hunted down at great expense were now left to rot, deemed irrelevant, or worse, heretical, by the new powers shaping the Mediterranean. Yet the library's fate wasn't sealed by ideology alone. Practical politics played an equally brutal role. As Alexandria's economic importance dwindled, so did the political will to maintain its crown jewel. Roman governors redirected funds to armies and infrastructure, seeing the library as a luxury the empire could no longer afford. Without the Ptolemies' relentless patronage, the institution became a ghost of itself, its halls emptier, its repairs deferred, its scholars scattered. Even the famed Museum, once a vibrant hub of debate, fell silent. What makes this political unraveling so poignant is how familiar it feels. The library's decline mirrors the fragility of knowledge institutions throughout history. Their survival hinges not just on the brilliance of their scholars, but on the priorities of those in power. When societies value learning, they build libraries that outlast dynasties. When they don't, even the greatest repositories of wisdom can vanish almost overnight. Alexandria's lesson isn't just about ancient politics. It's a warning about what happens when we take the guardians of knowledge for granted. The fire that consumed its scrolls was dramatic, but the slow burn of indifference was just as destructive. Among the ashes of Alexandria's lost treasures, one innovation refused to be forgotten: the Pinakes, a masterwork of organization so ahead of its time that it still shapes how we navigate knowledge today. Picture this: in an era when most libraries were chaotic collections of scrolls piled haphazardly on shelves, the scholar Callimachus envisioned something radical: a systematic map of human thought. His 120-scroll catalog didn't just inventory titles, it wove them into a living network of ideas, grouping works by genre, author, and even theme. Imagine walking into that ancient library, asking for texts on astronomy, and being handed not just star charts but a curated list of the most groundbreaking thinkers in the field, complete with notes on their methods and biases. This wasn't just a finding aid, it was the birth of critical scholarship. What made the Pinakes revolutionary was its depth. Unlike modern library catalogs that might list only titles and authors, Callimachus included biographical sketches of writers, summaries of their arguments, and even evaluations of their credibility. A philosopher's work wouldn't just be filed under ethics, it might come with a note explaining how their theories diverged from earlier schools of thought. This transformed the catalog from a mere tool into a companion for discovery, allowing scholars to trace the evolution of ideas across centuries and cultures. In many ways, the Pinakes functioned like an ancient Wikipedia, connecting knowledge in a web rather than a straight line. The tragedy, of course, is that the catalog itself vanished along with the library. But its DNA survives in every digital database we use today. When you search for a book online and see related works or author influences pop up, you're witnessing Callimachus' vision reborn. Even the Dewey Decimal System, with its hierarchical subject breakdowns, owes a quiet debt to that ancient Greek librarian who first dared to impose order on chaos. The Pinakes proved something profound, that how we organize knowledge is just as important as the knowledge itself. Without structure, even the greatest ideas risk becoming needles in a haystack, lost until someone builds a better way to find them. Perhaps the most poignant legacy of the Pinakes is what it reveals about the library's true purpose. Alexandria wasn't just hoarding scrolls, it was teaching the world how to think with them. In an age without search engines or algorithms, Callimachus and his team were the original curators, guiding seekers through the wilderness of information. That's why, even 2,000 years later, his work feels startlingly modern. The next time you effortlessly pull up a research paper or browse a digital library, remember, you're standing on the shoulders of an ancient scholar who believed that knowledge, no matter how vast, is only as powerful as our ability to share it. Hypatia stood at the crossroads of history, a luminous figure in a darkening age. Born around 350 of the Common Era, she wasn't just another scholar in Alexandria. She became its intellectual heartbeat, the last true heir to the library's legacy. While the physical halls of the great library may have already faded by her time, its spirit lived on in her classrooms. Imagine her lectures, where students both pagan and Christian gathered to hear her unravel the mysteries of mathematics and the cosmos. She didn't just teach, she embodied the library's ideals, proving that knowledge could transcend the divides of religion and politics. Her brilliance wasn't confined to abstract theory. Hypatia's work on conic sections and astronomical instruments pushed the boundaries of what was scientifically possible. She refined the astrolabe, a device so crucial for navigation that it would guide explorers centuries later. But her greatest contribution wasn't just in equations or star charts. It was in her unwavering belief that reason and inquiry should stand above dogma. In a city increasingly torn by religious strife, she refused to take sides, insisting that truth wasn't the property of any one faith. That neutrality, once respected, eventually made her a target. The tragedy of Hypatia's death in 415 wasn't just the loss of a singular mind, it was the extinguishing of an entire way of thinking. A mob, incited by political and religious leaders, dragged her from her chariot, stripped her naked, and tore her apart with broken pottery in a church. The brutality wasn't random, it was symbolic. Her murder sent a chilling message. The age of open inquiry was over, and ideology would now dictate what could and couldn't be known. Alexandria, once the capital of curiosity, had become a battleground where ideas were settled with violence. Yet Hypatia's legacy refuses to die. Her story echoes whenever scholars face persecution for asking uncomfortable questions, whenever facts are sacrificed at the altar of belief. She reminds us that the greatest threat to knowledge isn't fire or neglect, it's the human tendency to fear what we don't understand. In a world still grappling with censorship and ideological divides, Hypatia's life is more than history, it's a warning. The library didn't just crumble from external forces, it fell because the society that built it forgot why it mattered. And that's a forgetting we can't afford to repeat. Even as Alexandria's halls fell silent, the flame of its knowledge refused to be extinguished, it simply found new keepers. Half a millennium after the library's decline, a renaissance of learning blossomed in Baghdad under the Abbasid Caliphate. Here, the House of Wisdom rose as Alexandria's spiritual successor, a beacon where scholars from across the Muslim world gathered not to mourn lost scrolls, but to rescue what remained. Imagine teams of translators Persian, Syrian, Jewish, and Arab hunched over manuscripts, painstakingly rendering Greek philosophy, Indian mathematics, and Persian astronomy into Arabic. Their mission was urgent: to salvage the fragments of ancient wisdom before time erased them completely. This wasn't just preservation, it was reinvention. Take Aristotle's works, which might have vanished like so many others. Instead, scholars like Al-Kindi and Hunayn ibn Ishaq didn't merely copy his texts, they interrogated them, wrote commentaries that expanded his ideas, and fused them with insights from other traditions. When you read Thomas Aquinas quoting Aristotle in medieval Europe, you're witnessing the echo of Baghdad's scholars, who had kept those ideas alive through centuries of turmoil. The same happened with Ptolemy's star charts, which Islamic astronomers corrected and refined, or Euclid's geometry, which became the foundation for groundbreaking algebra. What made the House of Wisdom so remarkable was how it mirrored Alexandria's deepest values. Like its predecessor, it thrived on cultural exchange, drawing scholars from as far as China and Spain. The caliphs, much like the Ptolemies, understood that knowledge was the ultimate currency of power. They sponsored research, debated with thinkers, and built libraries that became engines of innovation. Here, the astrolabe perfected by Hypatia centuries earlier evolved into sophisticated navigation tools. Medical texts from Alexandria found new life in the works of Al-Razi, whose clinical observations laid groundwork for modern medicine. Yet this golden age did more than rescue old ideas, it transformed them. The mathematician Al-Khwarizmi didn't just preserve Indian numerals, he used them to invent algebra, a discipline that would revolutionize science. Optics pioneer Ibn al-Haytham built on Greek theories to debunk ancient misconceptions about vision, pioneering the scientific method itself. In every field, scholars weren't just curators of the past, they were its editors, critics, and most importantly, its collaborators. The lesson here isn't just about resilience, it's about how knowledge migrates. Ideas don't die when libraries burn, they go underground, carried by those who refuse to let them fade. When Europe later reconnected with these works through translations in Toledo and Sicily, it sparked the Renaissance, proof that the chain of learning, though stretched thin, was never truly broken. The House of Wisdom reminds us that while institutions may fall, the human hunger for understanding is indestructible. Alexandria's legacy wasn't stored in its scrolls alone, but in the minds that cherished them and the hands that passed them forward against all odds. The hunt for the Library of Alexandria's lost treasures isn't confined to history books. It's a high-stakes race playing out in labs, excavation sites, and even outer space. Archaeologists have combed Alexandria's modern streets with ground-penetrating radar, hoping to detect buried chambers where scrolls might have been hidden during the library's final days. Meanwhile, historians scour medieval manuscripts like detectives, searching for faint echoes of lost works. A single sentence in a 9th-century Arabic text, for instance, might preserve a fragment of a play by Sophocles or a theorem by Euclid that vanished centuries earlier. These aren't just academic exercises, they're rescue missions for ideas that shaped civilization. One of the most tantalizing clues lies not in Egypt, but in Italy. The Villa of the Papyri, buried by Mount Vesuvius in 79 of the Common Era, offers a haunting glimpse of what Alexandria's collections might have contained. Here, a private library of carbonized scrolls baked into brittle charcoal by volcanic heat lies waiting to give up its secrets. For centuries, these scrolls crumbled at the slightest touch. But now, advanced CT scanners peer inside them like X-rays, and artificial intelligence algorithms slowly unravel their inked layers, letter by letter. Already, researchers have recovered lost philosophical texts by Epicurus and Philodemus. If this technology can unlock Herculaneum scrolls, could it one day resurrect Alexandria's? Then there's the miracle of the palimpsests manuscripts, where medieval monks scraped away ancient texts to reuse parchment, unknowingly preserving them beneath new layers of writing. The most famous is the Archimedes palimpsest, where 10th century prayers hide groundbreaking mathematical treatises. Using multispectral imaging, scholars have resurrected Archimedes' erased words, including his revolutionary method of mechanical theorems, which anticipated calculus by nearly 2 millennia. It's a thrilling reminder that even when knowledge seems erased, traces linger, hidden in plain sight. But perhaps the most surprising frontier in this search is space. Ancient astronomers like Hypatia mapped the stars with such precision that modern satellites still use their coordinates to calibrate instruments. By comparing today's celestial data with descriptions in surviving texts, scientists have identified lost star catalogs embedded in later works, ghostly fingerprints of Alexandria's vanished scholarship. Every discovery, whether in a Vatican archive or a digital scan, chips away at the myth that the library's knowledge is gone forever. The past has a way of whispering to those who know how to listen. 2,000 years after flames consumed the ancient world's greatest repository of knowledge, a bold resurrection emerged on the shores of the same Mediterranean city. The Bibliotheca Alexandrina, inaugurated in 2002, isn't just a nostalgic echo of its namesake, it's a defiant reimagining of what a library can be. With its striking tilted disc design symbolizing the rising sun of knowledge, this modern marvel houses millions of books, but its ambition stretches far beyond paper. Inside, a planetarium projects the cosmos onto domed ceilings, echoing the star charts once studied by Hypatia. Digital labs preserve fragile manuscripts with spectral imaging, while vast servers archive the Internet's collective wisdom. It's a living experiment. Can the spirit of Alexandria's universal knowledge survive in the digital age? Yet the new library's most revolutionary feature isn't its architecture or technology, it's its accessibility. Where the ancient Ptolemies hoarded scrolls, today's librarians collaborate with projects like Google Books and the Internet Archive, digitizing texts from Timbuktu to Tokyo. A child in Nairobi can now read Galileo's notes, while a scholar in Lima across references medieval Persian manuscripts with a click. This democratization of knowledge would have stunned the scholars of antiquity, who trekked across continents to access what we now carry in our pockets. But with this power comes new vulnerabilities. Digital data, unlike parchment, can vanish in an instant, not from flames but from corrupted files, obsolete software, or corporate servers shuttering without warning. The irony is profound. Our most durable knowledge medium is also the most fragile. Misinformation adds another layer of danger. The ancient Library of Alexandria curated its collections with ruthless precision, while today's digital landscape drowns truth in noise. Algorithms prioritize engagement over accuracy, and deep fakes muddy the line between fact and fiction. In response, the Bibliotheca Alexandrina has become a battleground for digital literacy, training visitors to navigate this chaos. Its archivists face a dual mission, preserving the past while arming society against the erosion of truth. Perhaps the library's greatest lesson lies in what it chooses to save. Alongside Shakespeare and Einstein, its servers store tweets, memes, and even video games, recognizing that culture isn't just found in lofty treatises, but in the everyday artifacts that define an era. This inclusivity mirrors Alexandria's original vision, where Egyptian medical scrolls held equal value to Greek philosophy. The challenge now is ensuring that our digital Alexandria doesn't repeat history's mistakes. Will future generations look back at our terabytes of data as we do at lost scrolls puzzling over fragments of a world we failed to protect? Or will we finally learn that knowledge, no matter how vast, is only as eternal as our commitment to safeguarding it? What if the Library of Alexandria held secrets that could rewrite history as we know it? Among its vanished scrolls might have been Aristotle's lost dialogues, works his students called exoteric, meant for public reading, now surviving only in fragments quoted by later writers. Imagine uncovering his complete thoughts on ethics or metaphysics, free from centuries of interpretation. Even more tantalizing are whispers of advanced technological knowledge. Hero of Alexandria's surviving writings describe steam-powered devices and automatic temple doors, mechanical marvels considered ahead of their time. But what if his published works were just the tip of the iceberg? Some scholars speculate the library housed blueprints for inventions so revolutionary they could have jump-started an industrial revolution 2,000 years early. Then there's the medical lore. Ancient Egyptian papyri like the Ebers papyrus prove they mastered complex surgeries and pharmacology. The library likely held expanded versions of these texts, possibly including treatments for diseases we still struggle with today. A single scroll might have contained the cure for a forgotten plague, or insights into neural pathways that predated modern neuroscience by millennia. Even more intriguing are the gaps in our historical record. The Carthaginian general Hannibal famously crossed the Alps with war elephants, a feat so extraordinary that his lost memoir, possibly housed in Alexandria, could have revealed logistical secrets rivaling modern military handbooks. Geographical knowledge may have suffered the greatest loss. Mariners' charts detailing trade routes to distant lands like sub-Saharan Africa or the Indian Ocean could have reshaped our understanding of ancient exploration. Some theorists even suggest the library held maps referencing places like Atlantis, not as myth but as documented locations. While that idea veers into speculation, it underscores a profound truth. Every vanished text represents a missing piece in humanity's collective memory. These losses aren't just academic, they're cautionary tales. When the library burned, we didn't just lose books, we lost alternate paths our civilization might have taken. What if Euclid's geometry had reached China centuries earlier? Could Archimedes' engineering have inspired sustainable energy solutions before the climate crisis? The irony is crushing. The very institution built to prevent such losses became the symbol of how easily knowledge slips away. That's why these mysteries matter, not for the fantasies they inspire, but for the urgency they instill. Every ancient scroll turned to ash is a warning. Preservation isn't about nostalgia, but about ensuring future generations don't repeat our mistakes. The shadow of Alexandria stretches across centuries, touching the shelves of every modern library you've ever walked into. Think about the Library of Congress with its towering stacks and digital archives. It's not just a building, but a direct descendant of that ancient dream to gather all knowledge under one roof. The founders of these institutions didn't just admire Alexandria, they learned from its failures. Fireproof vaults and climate-controlled rooms now guard against the flames that consumed its scrolls, while servers scattered across the globe store backups of humanity's digital output. It's as if we've taken Alexandria's greatest weakness, its fragility, and engineered a solution so robust that even a catastrophe couldn't erase our collective memory again. But the influence runs deeper than architecture. Take the Dewey Decimal System, that familiar numerical code guiding you to books on chemistry or medieval poetry. Its structure dividing knowledge into categories and subcategories mirrors the Pinakes Callimachus revolutionary catalogue from 2,000 years ago. He was the first to ask, how do we make wisdom findable? And we're still answering that question today. Even the humble interlibrary loan, where a request from a small town library can summon a rare volume from across the world, fulfills Alexandria's unspoken promise: no book, no idea should be out of reach. What's truly remarkable is how these modern temples of learning have expanded Alexandria's vision. Where the ancient library relied on seized scrolls and royal decrees, today's institutions thrive on collaboration. The Digital Public Library of America aggregates millions of free resources, while projects like Project Gutenberg rescue out-of-print works from oblivion, all in the spirit of universal access. And just as Alexandria's scholars debated under colonnaded walkways, university libraries now host makerspaces and innovation hubs, proving that knowledge grows best when it's shared, not hoarded. Yet challenges remain. Alexandria's greatest lesson wasn't just about preservation, it was about curation. In an age of information overload, where fake news spreads faster than facts, libraries have become the last bastions of discernment. Librarians don't just shelve books, they fight misinformation, teach digital literacy, and uphold standards of evidence that would make Eratosthenes proud. The irony is poignant. The more we digitize, the more we need guardians to help us navigate the flood. Perhaps the most profound echo of Alexandria lies in something intangible: the belief that knowledge should belong to everyone. From the grand reading rooms of the British Library to the mobile libraries reaching remote villages, this ideal transcends time and technology. The ancient librarians would marvel at our tools, but they'd recognize the mission instantly: to light fires in the minds of seekers, to connect ideas across generations, and to build something greater than any one collection could hold. The library isn't just a place, it's a promise, one we've been striving to keep for over 2,000 years. Carl Sagan's iconic Cosmos episode didn't just describe the Library of Alexandria, it wept for it. As he stood before a recreated hall of scrolls, his voice trembling with uncharacteristic emotion, he framed its loss as a cosmic tragedy, a turning point where humanity forgot its own potential. This moment, watched by millions, cemented the library's modern reputation as a martyr for knowledge. But Sagan's portrayal, powerful as it was, took creative liberties. The fire he depicted as catastrophic and absolute was likely more gradual, a slow unraveling over centuries. Yet his poetic license served a deeper truth. The library's destruction symbolizes the fragility of enlightenment itself, a theme that resonates far beyond historical accuracy. Films like Alejandro Amenabar's Agora amplify this symbolism, casting Hypatia's death and the library's decline as a clash between reason and fanaticism. Rachel Weisz's portrayal of the philosopher, her fingers tracing celestial models as mobs rage outside, turns Alexandria into a stage for timeless tensions. The film's dramatic license, like showing scrolls burning in the Serapeum, which likely housed copies, not originals, isn't about facts but feeling. It taps into our collective anxiety about modern book bans and rising anti-science rhetoric, using ancient Alexandria as a mirror. Literature takes this further. In Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, firefighters torch books in a dystopia that eerily echoes the worst myths of Alexandria's fate. When protagonist Montag memorizes Ecclesiastes to preserve it, he reenacts the scribes who salvaged fragments from the flames. Even fantasy worlds borrow the motif. The Great Library of Orinth in Throne of Glass, or the restricted archives in the Name of the Wind, all nod to Alexandria's legacy as both sanctuary and battleground. What makes these depictions so enduring isn't their fidelity to history, but their emotional honesty. Each retelling projects contemporary fears onto the library's ruins. During the Cold War, it symbolized nuclear annihilation's threat to culture. In the digital age, it warns of data fragility, how entire civilizations of knowledge can vanish with a server crash. The irony is rich. The library, which sought to consolidate truth, has become a canvas for our shifting anxieties, yet this malleability is its power. However we reshape its story, one truth remains. We keep retelling it because we're still afraid of losing what it stood for. The flames that consumed Alexandria never really died. They flicker in every act of censorship, every neglected archive, every time we choose ignorance over inquiry. And that's why its legend, however romanticized, refuses to fade. The Ptolemies didn't just collect knowledge, they treated it like currency, investing in it with the same strategic intensity modern nations pour into infrastructure or defense. Ships arriving in Alexandria's harbor weren't just taxed on spices and silks. Their scrolls were confiscated, copied, and added to the library's vaults, often without compensation. This wasn't piracy, it was policy. The royal family bankrolled translations of Hebrew scriptures, Persian astrological texts, and Indian mathematical treatises, paying scholars not just to preserve these works, but to debate and build upon them in public forums. Imagine a world where governments today funded thinkers the way they fund stadiums or military contracts, where the pursuit of understanding carried the same prestige as the pursuit of profit. Fast forward to our era, and the contrast couldn't be starker. Public libraries scrape by on dwindling budgets, while access to cutting-edge research hides behind journal paywalls costing thousands per subscription. A single study on cancer treatments might lock away breakthrough insights until a university or corporation pays the ransom. Even the internet, hailed as the new Library of Alexandria, has been carved into fiefdoms by algorithms that prioritize engagement over truth, turning knowledge into a commodity rather than a commons. The Ptolemies would have been baffled why hoard what thrives when shared. Yet Alexandria's model wasn't purely altruistic. Control over knowledge was a form of soft power, a way to position their city as the indispensable hub of the ancient world. By monopolizing texts, they attracted the brightest minds, ensuring innovation happened within their walls. And under their influence, today's tech giants employ a similar strategy, amassing data not to enlighten but to dominate. The difference: Alexandria's wealth flowed outward, subsidizing scholarship for anyone who could contribute. Modern platforms extract value from users while charging them for the privilege of access. The tension between profit and public good isn't new, but the stakes have never been higher. When a farmer in Ghana can't access agricultural studies locked behind paywalls, or a high school student hits a Wikipedia donation banner instead of a primary source, we're replaying an ancient dilemma with digital consequences. Open access projects like the Internet Archive and Sci-Hub are the modern equivalents of scribes smuggling scrolls out of Alexandria, guerrilla archivists fighting to reclaim what was never meant to be owned. Their existence begs a radical question. What if we treated knowledge like water, a resource so essential that privatizing it becomes unthinkable? Alexandria's ghost whispers a warning in every subscription fee and deleted dataset. The greatest threat to progress isn't the loss of information, but its enclosure. The Ptolemies, for all their flaws, understood that knowledge grows when planted in communal soil. Their library wasn't just a storehouse, it was a manifesto declaring that the future belongs to those who dare to share it. Consider this: every time a website vanishes, a blog disappears, or a social media platform purges old posts, we're reliving Alexandria's tragedy in miniature. The internet promised to be humanity's eternal library, yet its fragility rivals papyrus in a rainstorm. Dead links now outnumber the stars in Hypatia's catalog, and entire communities of knowledge evaporate when corporations shutter platforms or change algorithms. One study estimates that over 50% of links in Supreme Court decisions no longer work, legal precedents crumbling into digital dust. It's as if we've rebuilt Alexandria's Great Hall, only to watch sections collapse daily from neglect. But the threats go beyond broken URLs. Unlike the Ptolemies, who saw knowledge as a public good, today's digital landlords treat information as property. When a streaming service removes a classic film or a publisher locks research behind paywalls, they're not burning scrolls, they're paywalling them. Even Wikipedia, our closest echo of Alexandria's democratic ideal, relies on volunteer labor and donor goodwill. The irony stings. We've created more knowledge than ever before, yet structured its access around the very forces that doomed antiquity's greatest library: control, profit, and short-sightedness. There's a crucial difference, though. The scholars of Alexandria never saw their disaster coming. We have their story as a warning. Projects like the Internet Archive's Wayback Machine actively combat link rot, preserving billions of web pages like digital scribes copying scrolls. Tech activists fight for right to repair laws and open-source software, rejecting the idea that knowledge should be disposable or locked away. Even blockchain experiments with decentralized storage hint at a future where no single point of failure can erase our collective memory. The lesson isn't just about backups, it's about values. Alexandria thrived because a society chose to prioritize knowledge over short-term gains. Today, we face the same choice. Will we let ephemeral trends and corporate interests dictate what survives? Or will we build systems that honor the fragile, irreplaceable work of human curiosity? The library's ashes whisper a challenge. This time, we have no excuse not to listen. Alexandria's fate whispers a sobering truth across the centuries. Great libraries don't die in explosions. They fade with each scroll left uncopied, each budget cut, each generation that forgets to care. The real villain wasn't Caesar's fire or religious riots, but something far more ordinary: the slow creep of indifference. Year by year, the Ptolemies' successors diverted funds from scribes to soldiers. Scholars once celebrated like royalty found themselves begging for parchment, and when the mobs finally came, the library was already a hollow shell, its defenses weakened not by siege engines but by misplaced priorities. This pattern repeats today with eerie precision. In Timbuktu, militants torch ancient manuscripts while the world watches, but the real damage began decades earlier, when preservation funds dried up. In Syria, war reduced the Library of Aleppo to rubble, yet its collections had been decaying long before the bombs fell, victims of poor storage and political neglect. Even our digital age isn't immune. Data centers housing irreplaceable archives sit in flood zones or conflict regions, their backups an afterthought until disaster strikes. The lesson: knowledge doesn't vanish in moments, it's chipped away by 1,000 small betrayals. Climate change adds a cruel modern twist. Rising seas threaten coastal libraries from Venice to Boston, while humidity and heat warp delicate manuscripts faster than conservators can digitize them. In India, monsoon floods have wiped out entire collections of palm leaf texts dating back to Buddha's era. These aren't hypothetical risks, they're current events, unfolding with the same grim predictability as Alexandria's decline. Yet, unlike the ancients, we have the tools to fight back. Blockchain could decentralize archives, making them resistant to censorship. AI-powered scanners can preserve crumbling texts at unprecedented speeds. The question isn't capability, but commitment. Censorship wears new masks too. When governments rewrite textbooks or erase digital records, they're not burning libraries, they're airbrushing them, a subtler but equally deadly form of control. Even algorithms contribute, burying inconvenient truths beneath waves of clickbait and misinformation. Alexandria's librarians would recognize these tactics instantly. They knew knowledge wasn't just about accumulation, it was about access, about ensuring no gatekeeper could dictate what ideas survived. The antidote lies in what saved fragments of Alexandria's legacy: distributed networks. Monks in Byzantine monasteries copied Greek classics. Arab scholars translated texts into multiple languages. Today's equivalent, projects like the Internet Archive's decentralized servers, or seed banks preserving literature on rugged hard drives. Survival hinges on redundancy, not one library but thousands, not one copy but millions. Alexandria's ghost doesn't just warn us, it offers a blueprint. Support local libraries battling budget cuts. Demand open access to publicly funded research. Teach children that preserving knowledge isn't someone else's job. The next time you see a Wikipedia donation banner, remember, those small contributions are the modern equivalent of the Ptolemies ships, scouring the world not for gold, but for something far more precious: the scattered pieces of our collective memory. The fire that consumed Alexandria never really went out. It smolders in every neglected archive, every deleted dataset, every silenced voice, and it's ours to extinguish. Rediscovering these lost technologies feels like assembling a puzzle where most pieces have vanished, yet the few that remain hint at astonishing complexity. Among the most tantalizing is the Antikythera mechanism, a corroded bronze artifact salvaged from a shipwreck in 1901. For decades, it baffled historians, dismissed as an anomaly. But advanced imaging has since revealed its true nature: an intricate astronomical calculator capable of predicting eclipses and tracking planetary movements with gearwork rivaling 18th century clocks. If this single device survived, what other marvels might have filled the Library of Alexandria's halls? Ancient sources mention Archimedes' celestial globe, a working model of the cosmos, and automated puppet theaters powered by hydraulics. These weren't toys, they were proofs of concepts, early drafts of a technological revolution that flickered out too soon. Consider the war machines attributed to Archimedes during the siege of Syracuse. Roman historians describe clawed cranes that could lift ships from the water and mirrors focusing sunlight to set fleets ablaze. For centuries, these accounts were dismissed as legend until modern engineers reconstructed them. In 2005, a team from MIT proved the heat ray could ignite a wooden boat in seconds using polished bronze shields. Another group recreated the iron hand, demonstrating its terrifying efficiency. These weren't myths, they were blueprints, possibly recorded in scrolls that burned alongside Alexandria's other treasures. The loss isn't just about the devices themselves, but the underlying principles. How much further might mechanics have progressed if these ideas had spread, iterated upon, and refined? Chemical knowledge suffered equally devastating gaps. The famed Greek fire, an incendiary weapon used by the Byzantines, could burn on water, a formula so closely guarded that its secret died with the empire. But references in surviving texts suggest its roots may trace back to Alexandria's alchemists, who experimented with distilled petroleum and quicklime. Even more intriguing are hints of early batteries. The Baghdad Parthian cell, a clay jar filled with vinegar and copper rods, dates to the same era and could generate small electric charges. Were these curiosities, or did the library house treatises exploring their potential? The difference between a forgotten oddity and a world-changing invention often lies in whether knowledge is shared or siloed. Today's researchers are piecing together these fragments with tools the ancients couldn't fathom. X-ray fluorescence uncovers faded inks, while 3D modeling resurrects devices known only from descriptions. A Stanford team recently decoded Heron of Alexandria's pneumatic designs, building working models of his steam-powered Eolipile, the first known steam engine, and automated temple doors. These reconstructions aren't just academic exercises, they challenge our assumptions about technological timelines. The steam engine didn't begin with James Watt. It was rediscovered, reinvented after a millennium of lost potential. What makes these recoveries so vital is their reminder that innovation isn't linear. Progress stutters, backtracks, and leaps unexpectedly. The Library of Alexandria wasn't just storing knowledge, it was accelerating it, creating a feedback loop where each breakthrough fueled the next. Its destruction didn't just erase books, it broke a chain of thought, scattering links across time and space. Yet every time a modern scholar deciphers an ancient formula or an engineer tests a reconstructed device, that chain mends just a little. The library's legacy isn't confined to parchment and ink. It lives in the stubborn human refusal to let curiosity be extinguished. Even in ruins, Alexandria still teaches us that the past isn't a graveyard of dead ends. It's a minefield of untapped beginnings. The burning of the Library of Alexandria didn't just erase groundbreaking ideas. It may have also destroyed knowledge too dangerous to wield. Imagine a scroll detailing how to weaponize plague strains, or a suppressed religious text capable of reigniting ancient conflicts. The library's loss forces us to grapple with an uncomfortable question. Could some ideas be better left forgotten? This isn't just hypothetical. The Greek historian Plutarch claimed the Ptolemies deliberately locked away certain Egyptian alchemical texts, fearing their power. Even back then, people understood that knowledge without wisdom could be catastrophic. Today's debates over artificial intelligence and dual-use research mirror this ancient dilemma. When scientists resurrected the 1918 flu virus in 2005, critics argued they'd created a blueprint for bioterrorism. Similarly, AI labs now withhold powerful algorithms to prevent misuse, echoing Alexandria's scribes who might have debated which scrolls deserved preservation and which deserved obscurity. The tension is timeless. Progress demands exploration, but survival requires restraint. Yet there's a counterargument buried in history's ashes. Many feared the printing press would spread heresy, just as critics later warned encyclopedias would undermine authority. But suppressing knowledge rarely works long-term. It just leaves societies unprepared when forbidden ideas resurface. The library's lost medical scrolls might have contained cures we're still struggling to rediscover, while its banned philosophical texts could have spared centuries of dogmatic conflict if widely studied. The real lesson isn't that some truths are too dangerous to know. It's that no society can afford to let a privileged few control access to them. Alexandria's fate warns against both reckless dissemination and authoritarian gatekeeping. Perhaps the ideal isn't a library that burns or one that locks knowledge away, but one that equips everyone to wield it wisely. After all, darkness doesn't eliminate danger, it just leaves us stumbling toward it blindly. Beneath the towering reputation of Euclid and Archimedes, the Library of Alexandria thrived because of ordinary people whose names never made it into history books. Picture a scribe hunched over a papyrus scroll, fingers stained with ink as he meticulously copies a medical treatise letter by letter. One slip of the reed pen could alter a dosage or confuse a diagnosis, so his work demanded unwavering focus, the kind of quiet dedication that built empires of knowledge one stroke at a time. Nearby, a bilingual translator wrestles with a Persian astronomical text, searching for Greek equivalents to terms that have no direct translation. Her choices will shape how future scholars understand the stars, yet her struggles and triumphs vanish into the margins of history. The real magic happened in the communal spaces. In a sunlit courtyard, a group of medical students pores over a newly arrived Egyptian scroll detailing surgical techniques. Their heated debate whether to adopt the text's recommendation of honey as a wound disinfectant isn't just academic. Lives hang in the balance. Across the garden, a young astronomer from Rhodes compares Babylonian star charts with his own observations, scratching corrections onto a wax tablet. His adjustments might seem minor, but they'll ripple through centuries of celestial study. These weren't isolated geniuses working in solitude. They were part of a living network, each contributor refining and challenging the ideas that flowed through the library's halls. Even the library's custodians played a vital role. The unsung archivists who organized scrolls by subject, the cooks who fed scholars during all-night study sessions, the gardeners who cultivated medicinal herbs in the courtyards. Their labor created the ecosystem that made breakthroughs possible. A visiting physician might pluck fresh aloe from the gardens to test a remedy described in a Syrian scroll, while a poet could find inspiration in the scent of papyrus and cedar oil that perfumed the air. The library wasn't just a collection of texts, it was a symphony of human effort, every participant essential to the harmony. What's heartbreaking is how few of these individuals we can name. History remembers Hypatia, but not the student who smuggled her last writings to safety. We know Eratosthenes calculated the Earth's circumference, but not the sailors who provided the travel times he used for his math. These gaps matter because they distort our understanding of how knowledge actually grows, not through lone genius, but through collaboration, error, and incremental improvement. The scribe who spotted a mistake in a geometry proof, the librarian who reshelved a scroll where another scholar would later discover it, the slave who kept the lamps burning so debates could continue into the night, they were all part of the story. Perhaps the most poignant relic isn't a lost scroll, but a humble ostracana pottery shard found in Alexandria's ruins. On it, a child's shaky handwriting practices Greek letters, likely the son or daughter of a scholar learning to write between the shelves. That fragment, more than any grand treatise, captures the library's true legacy, a place where curiosity was contagious, where even the smallest participant could reach for greatness. Every time we share an idea, correct a friend's misunderstanding, or pass along a book, we're walking in their footsteps, proof that knowledge isn't just stored in libraries, but carried forward in the hands of those willing to listen, learn, and teach. The Library of Alexandria has long outgrown its physical ruins to become something far more powerful, a mirror reflecting humanity's deepest anxieties and aspirations. In the hands of writers like Jorge Luis Borges, its endless corridors transformed into a metaphysical labyrinth where the pursuit of knowledge becomes both divine and maddening. His short story, The Library of Babel, reimagines Alexandria as an infinite universe of books, containing every possible combination of letters, every truth, every lie, every story yet unwritten. Here, the library isn't just a building. It's a cosmic paradox embodying the exhilarating and terrifying boundlessness of human curiosity. Borges, who went blind like the library's own final scholars, understood that knowledge could be as much a prison as a liberation, a theme that resonates in our era of information overload and algorithmic echo chambers. Umberto Eco took the metaphor further in The Name of the Rose, where a medieval monastery's labyrinthine library becomes a battleground over who controls truth. The novel's blind librarian, Jorge, a nod to Borges hoards Aristotle's lost treatise on comedy, fearing laughter could undermine religious authority. Eco's chilling conclusion, where the library burns with its secrets, isn't just historical fiction, it's a warning about the dangers of gatekeeping knowledge. Both authors grasped Alexandria's symbolic potency. It represents not just what we've lost, but what we risk losing whenever dogma triumphs over inquiry. Yet the library's symbolism isn't confined to literature. For technologists, it's a cautionary tale about digital fragility. Tim Berners-Lee, inventor of the World Wide Web, has cited Alexandria as inspiration for creating decentralized data storage, a way to prevent a single point of failure from erasing collective memory. Conversely, Silicon Valley's data monopolies now face their own Alexandria moment, as platforms vanish overnight, taking users' creations with them. The parallel is uncanny. Just as the Ptolemies once controlled access to scrolls, today's tech giants dictate who sees what and for how long. Activists have reclaimed the library's imagery too. When Google launched its controversial book scanning project, critics dubbed it Alexandria 2.0, sparking debates over whether privatization could become the new burning. Meanwhile, initiatives like the Internet Archive's Great 78 project preserve vintage audio recordings, a modern echo of scribes salvaging fragments from the flames. The lesson is clear: Alexandria's legacy isn't about lamenting the past, it's about fighting for the future. Even in popular culture, the library's ghost lingers. From the Jedi archives in Star Wars to the magical restricted section of Hogwarts, fictional repositories of wisdom all owe a debt to Alexandria's mythos. These depictions tap into a primal fear that somewhere, someone is deciding which ideas survive. The library's story endures because it's our story, a reminder that knowledge is never truly safe, and its guardianship is a responsibility we all share. Whether as warning or inspiration, Alexandria's flame still burns, not in stone or parchment, but in the stories we tell about who we are and who we aspire to be. Beneath the modern bustle of Alexandria's waterfront, a silent hunt is underway, one that could rewrite our understanding of the ancient world's greatest library. Recent dives in the city's harbor have revealed more than sunken ships and broken amphorae. They've unearthed tantalizing fragments of the past. Imagine a diver's gloved hand brushing silt from a pottery shard, only to find Greek letters staring back, a receipt for scrolls perhaps, or a scholar's notes preserved by the sea. These aren't just artifacts, they're whispers from a lost age, proof that the library's footprint lingers beneath layers of sand and time. The real breakthroughs come from technology straight out of science fiction. Side-scan sonar paints ghostly images of submerged structures, revealing outlines that match ancient descriptions of the library district. In 2016, a team using underwater drones discovered massive stone blocks arranged in a grid, possibly the foundations of lecture halls or storage vaults. Even more intriguing are the lead ingots stamped with Ptolemaic seals, likely used to anchor scroll racks against earthquakes. Each piece is a breadcrumb leading back to the library's layout, hinting at how knowledge was organized before disaster struck. But the most promising clues lie in the harbor's dead zone, where low oxygen levels preserve organic materials that would decay elsewhere. Here, archaeologists have recovered papyrus fragments coated in wax, the ancient equivalent of reusable notebooks. Some show geometric diagrams eerily similar to Euclid's surviving works. Others contain medical prescriptions that mirror texts from the Ebers papyrus. These fragile survivors suggest something extraordinary, that when parts of the library collapsed into the sea during earthquakes, they may have taken their contents with them, sealed in waterlogged but intact containers. The challenge now is separating legend from reality. For every legitimate discovery, there are false hopes, like the 2005 claim of a library tunnel that turned out to be a Roman sewer. Yet even disappointments yield insights. Analysis of sediment layers confirms that much of ancient Alexandria's coastline sank abruptly in the 4th century, likely during the earthquake of 365. This cataclysm could explain why no grand ruins were left to plunder. The library didn't just burn, it slipped beneath the waves. What keeps researchers going is the potential locked in that underwater graveyard. Buried under meters of sediment could be sealed clay jars, their contents protected like time capsules. Advanced techniques like muon tomography, which uses cosmic rays to X-ray solid rock, might soon map buried chambers without invasive digging. The dream, a trove like the Herculaneum papyri, where carbonized scrolls are now being read through particle accelerators. If just one intact text surfaces, a lost play by Sophocles, an unknown treatise by Archimedes, it would be like hearing the library's voice after 2,000 years of silence. Every broken pot and faded inscription is a reminder Alexandria's story isn't over. The same waters that swallowed its greatness may yet surrender its secrets, piece by painstaking piece. For archaeologists, each dive is a leap of faith that somewhere in the murk the past still waits, patient and full of surprises. Speculative fiction gives us a tantalizing window into what might have been a world where the Library of Alexandria's flame never flickered out. Imagine an alternate timeline where its scrolls survived the fires, where scholars continued to build on Euclid's geometry and Hypatia's astronomy without interruption. Would Copernicus have had access to Aristarchus' heliocentric theories, accelerating the scientific revolution by centuries? Might Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks been filled not just with his own genius, but with fragments of lost engineering treatises from Heron of Alexandria, pushing humanity into an early industrial age? These aren't just idle daydreams, they're urgent reminders of how fragile the chain of progress truly is. One of the most compelling what-ifs revolves around medicine. The library's Egyptian medical scrolls contained surgical techniques and herbal remedies that wouldn't be rediscovered until the modern era. In a world where those texts survived, would the Black Death have claimed millions if physicians had access to ancient germ theory or antiseptic practices? The historian James Burke once speculated that with Alexandria intact, humanity might have reached the moon by the 1400s, a staggering thought that underscores how much was lost in those flames. Yet the most profound impact might have been cultural, not just technological. The library was a melting pot of Greek, Egyptian, Persian, and Indian thought, a place where borders between disciplines and civilizations blurred. If its collections had endured, would the Enlightenment's ideals of reason and tolerance have taken root earlier, averting centuries of religious wars? Could a surviving Alexandria have fostered a global renaissance where knowledge flowed freely between East and West instead of fragmenting into isolated traditions? Alternate history novels like Kim Stanley Robinson's The Years of Rice and Salt explore these possibilities, painting worlds where the library's survival reshapes everything from philosophy to politics. But these thought experiments aren't just about nostalgia for a lost past, they're mirrors held up to our own era. Every time a digital archive vanishes due to corporate bankruptcy or a government censors scientific research, we're replaying Alexandria's tragedy on a smaller scale. The difference is we have tools the ancients lacked. Projects like the Long Now Foundation's Rosetta Disk, which etches human languages onto nickel for 10,000-year preservation, or Norway's Arctic World Archive, storing data in an abandoned mine, are modern attempts to break the cycle of forgetting. What makes Alexandria's what-ifs so haunting is their duality. They grieve for the lost but also celebrate what was saved. How Arab scholars rescued Aristotle's works, how Byzantine monks copied Greek poetry, how a single surviving fragment might hold the key to future breakthroughs. The library's ghost whispers a challenge, not to mourn what we've lost, but to protect what remains. After all, the next Alexandria isn't just a building, It's the sum of every backup, every translation, every child taught to cherish the fragile gift of knowledge. And that's a story still being written. The Arctic World Archive might look like something from a science fiction film, a stark, snowbound vault buried deep inside an abandoned coal mine on the remote island of Svalbard. But this isn't a doomsday bunker for the ultra-wealthy. It's a global insurance policy for knowledge. Here, reels of specially developed film can last 1,000 years, encoding everything from masterpieces of literature to the genetic blueprints of crops. The choice of location is no accident. Svalbard's permafrost ensures natural refrigeration, while its geopolitical neutrality makes it a safe haven in times of conflict. It's as if the Ptolemies had foreseen the digital age and built their library inside a glacier. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, the Million Book Project takes a radically different approach. Instead of locking knowledge away, it floods the digital landscape with free, digitized books, over 2 million and counting. Universities from India to Indiana collaborate to scan and upload texts in dozens of languages, creating a distributed web of knowledge so vast that no single disaster could erase it. The strategy echoes ancient scribes who copied scrolls across monasteries, but with a modern twist. Blockchain timestamps verify each entry, creating an unbroken chain of authenticity. The real innovation, though, lies in how these projects learn from Alexandria's failures. Where the ancient library relied on centralized control, today's archivists embrace decentralization. The Rosetta project etches linguistic data onto nickel disks, while GitHub's Arctic Code Vault stores open-source software in the same Svalbard mine, ensuring future generations could rebuild our digital world from scratch. Even AI plays a role. Machine learning algorithms now reconstruct damaged texts, piecing together fragments of ancient manuscripts with the patience of 1,000 human scholars. Yet preservation is only half the battle. Accessibility matters just as much. The original Library of Alexandria failed partly because its treasures were concentrated in one vulnerable location. Modern solutions like the Interplanetary File System (IPFS) tackle this by scattering data across countless nodes worldwide. Lose one server, and the information survives elsewhere, a digital echo of how oral traditions kept stories alive across generations. The stakes couldn't be higher. Climate change threatens coastal archives, cyber attacks target digital repositories, and political censorship erases inconvenient truths daily. But for the first time in history, we have the tools to fight back. From a frozen mine in the Arctic to the distributed networks of the cloud, humanity is weaving a safety net for knowledge, one that even fire, war, or time itself will struggle to break. The lesson of Alexandria wasn't just about loss, it was about resilience, and this time we're determined to get it right. The Library of Alexandria's story doesn't end with its ashes. It lives in every classroom, every server farm, every time we tap a screen to summon the world's knowledge. That's the paradox at the heart of this ancient tragedy. The library burned, but its ideal never could. We see its ghost in the quiet determination of a librarian restoring a water-damaged manuscript, in the volunteer translating Wikipedia articles into a minority language, in the teenager streaming a lecture from halfway across the planet. These aren't just acts of preservation. They're acts of rebellion against the forces that erased Alexandria, against time, against indifference, against the arrogance of thinking knowledge can take care of itself. What makes the library's legacy so urgent today isn't just the threat of loss, but the danger of illusion. We've built a digital Alexandria vaster than the Ptolemies could have dreamed, yet it's fragile in ways they'd recognize instantly. A single solar flare could fry satellites holding irreplaceable data. A change in corporate policy might wipe out decades of forum discussions. just as religious edicts once purged unworthy texts from ancient shelves. Even our memories are outsourcing to the cloud family photos, personal journals, the very evidence of our lives entrusted to servers we'll never see. The lesson here isn't just about backup drives. It's about recognizing that every era's greatest strength, papyrus, printing presses, petabytes, comes with its own vulnerabilities. But there's hope in how we've learned from Alexandria's mistakes. Where the Ptolemies centralized knowledge in one vulnerable location, we're weaving a global safety net. Projects like the Internet Archive's Wayback Machine crawl the web like digital scribes, copying pages before they vanish. Blockchain experiments timestamp discoveries in unbreakable chains of evidence. Even farmers in rural Kenya now preserve indigenous crop knowledge on solar-powered tablets, a distributed library no fire could ever consume. This is the true inheritance of Alexandria, not the tragedy of its fall, but the ingenuity of those who refuse to let history repeat. The most profound tribute we can pay isn't building bigger libraries, but fostering wiser societies. That means teaching children not just how to search, but how to question, to approach the digital ocean with the same critical eye Alexandrian scholars turned on scrolls. It means valuing librarians as much as influencers, recognizing that curators of truth are the immune system of democracy. Above all, it means remembering that knowledge, no matter how perfectly preserved, is meaningless without the courage to use it. Hypatia didn't just catalog stars, she dared to challenge dogma. Eratosthenes didn't just measure the earth, he proved curiosity could conquer convention. So let's not romanticize Alexandria as a lost golden age. Its real power lies in how it challenges us to do better. Every Wikipedia edit, every rescued oral history, every schoolgirl with a tablet full of e-books, they're all stitches in a safety net we're still weaving, one that might finally catch the falling embers next time. Because ideas don't burn, they only fade when we stop passing them forward, and that's a choice no flame can ever take from us.